Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Tira
Bhāgavatam, Canto 4, Dhruva Maharaj's Return Home, Chapter 9, Text 36. Maitreya Uvacha, Mukunda Siddhara Vindayo, Rajo Jushastata Bhavadrishajana, Vanchanditana Savitirthamatmano, Yadrichaya Labdhasmana Samridhaya, Maitreya Uvacha, Navai Mukundasya Padara Vindayo, Vajo Jujastha Bhava Vishajana,
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The great sage Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, persons like you who are pure devotees of the lotus feet of Mukunda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can offer liberation, and who are always attached to the perfectly, he is always satisfied. The pure devotee never hankers after any kind of material prosperity. The karmis, however, or jnanis or yogis, endeavor always for their own personal happiness. Karmis work day and night to improve their economic condition. Jnanis undergo severe austerities in order to get liberation, and yogis also undergo severe austerities by practicing the yoga system for attainment of wonderful mystic powers. A devotee, however, is not interested in such activities. He does not want mystic powers or liberation or material prosperity. He is satisfied in any condition of life, as long as he is constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. The Lord's feet are compared to the lotus, wherein there is saffron dust. A devotee is always engaged in drinking the honey from the lotus feet of the Lord. Unless one is freed from all material desires, he cannot actually taste the honey from the Lord's lotus feet. One has to discharge his devotional duties without being disturbed by the coming and going of material circumstances. This desirelessness for material prosperity is called nishkama. One should not mistakenly think that nishkama means giving up all desires. That is impossible. A living entity is eternally existent and he cannot give up desires. A living entity must have desires. That is the symptom of life. When there is a recommendation to become desireless, it is to be understood that this means that we should not desire anything for our sense gratification. For a devotee, this state of mind, nispriha, is the right position. Actually, every one of us already has an arrangement for our standard of material comforts. A devotee should always remain satisfied with the standard of comforts offered by the Lord as stated in the Ishopanishad, Tena Tyaktena Bunjitaha. This saves time for executing Krishna consciousness. Om Agyanatimarandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Translation again. The great sage Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, persons like you who are the pure devotees of the lotus feet of Mukunda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can offer liberation, and who are always attached to the honey of his lotus feet, are always satisfied in serving at the lotus feet of the Lord. In any condition of life, such persons remain satisfied, and thus they never ask the Lord for material prosperity. So this pastime of Dhruva Maharaj, it's very special. So we're here worshiping Lord Krishna every day, all day, as much as we can. And Krishna, he appears in Kali Yuga as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it is known that Lord Chaitanya would listen to this story of Dhruva over and over again, many times. Said that he heard it hundreds of times. Which, that's a big deal. If Krishna is playing the part of a devotee, and he's interested in hearing of his devotee, not just once, not twice, but repeatedly, then we should follow suit also. So by hearing the glories of the devotees, naturally, it's going to bring us to hearing the glories of Krishna. So this is the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, said that the 10th canto is like the face of Krishna, the personality. So as we work up from the beginning cantos, it's like we're taking darshan and working all the way up to seeing Krishna directly. So Dhruva Maharaj, he exemplifies taking to devotional service with full force. Shloka in the Bhāgavatam, what is it? Sarva kama kama va moksha kama udaradihi tivrena bhakti yogena yajeta purisham param. So this tivrena bhakti yogena, endeavoring with bhakti with full force. Dhruva is like the personification of that. Because when he was going off to the forest, he wasn't going to engage in bhajan just to worship the Lord. Sometimes devotees, they want to leave here and go to Vrindavan and just engage in bhajan, just chant the holy names because, the world is just a hellish place. But Dhruva, he was going to the forest. Why? Because he wanted a kingdom. Not just any kingdom, but the greatest kingdom that anybody's ever known. So, as we all know, he was instructed by Narada Muni, who gave him instructions of how to attain that. And just like that verse says, that whether one is filled with desires, there's no desires, or desires liberation, then one should engage with full force all their energy in devotional service. And the Lord will provide. And this is exactly what happened to Dhruva. He attained his goals, but upon attaining those goals, he realized how foolish he was to approach the Lord with such a desire. Like a little child asking for something. But this is the nature of devotional service. Simply by approaching Krishna, one will become purified. It's not that we have to give up all of our desires, give up our way of life. Prabhupada said, Krishna consciousness, you don't have to give anything up. You simply add Krishna. So we shift our consciousness directed towards Krishna, and purification will come. And Dhruva meets the Lord face to face, which quite intense. You read about Dhruva's experience, and he's living just on fruits and berries every few days for a month. And then that's too much, so then he goes to eat dry grass and leaves every, week, once a week. Have any of you ever tried to eat like a cow and just eat grass and leaves? It's not going to be so pleasant. But he's able to do that and still engage fully in his devotional service with rapt concentration upon the form of the Lord, as instructed by Narada Muni. But then he progresses further to just taking water, and as we all know, then he subsists only on air. So I was thinking about this actually. In recent times, there's people propagating certain breathing practices to help one go deeper in their consciousness or help them with anxiety, bring health benefits, whatever it may be. Okay, and we know it's not Satya Yuga. This isn't the age to go into our deep meditation and pranayama, but these are age-old tested methods to help this machine that we find ourselves in of the body. But the point is, one can do this simple breathing exercise and have some kind of effect that you can perceive. A shift in consciousness, concentration. But one may be able to do this practice and hold their breath for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes. Okay, if you could get to 4 minutes, it's really deep, but beyond that, not so likely. Dhruva got to the point where he's holding his breath almost eternally, standing on one leg, sitting there, no more breathing, just completely fixed in his consciousness, to the point that the whole world was feeling the pressure from this. All the demigods. So then this provided the impetus for them to approach the Lord. As we hear constantly throughout the Bhāgavatam. There's a problem. So then the demigods, they go to the Lord, please help, please help. Just like us, but we ask for help with, our grades, our studies, our anxieties. But they're considered with the whole world because they're also servants of the Lord. So here's Dhruva, perfected his meditation, and he's sitting there in trance, viewing the form of the Lord internally. And like I was mentioning with this type of breathing exercise, usually, you go inward and you can kind of shut things off and there's a shift. So you can't even imagine the magnitude of how Dhruva was locked in and meditating upon the form of the Lord. But then, all of a sudden, it vanished, it disappeared, and he was disturbed. So he opened his eyes, and what did he see when he opened his eyes? Yeah, there's the Lord standing there right in front of him. But upon seeing the Lord, he didn't even want to approach with his paltry desires for his kingdom, for his envy of his brother, his anger towards his stepmother. Simply seeing the Lord was pleasing enough. And this is interesting. I remember I was watching Following Srila Prabhupada one time, and there was some Mataji, she was talking about Srila Prabhupada. She said she was feeling so many problems with something going on with the temple management, everybody has their own experience. And she was going to Srila Prabhupada to bring it to him, but immediately upon seeing Srila Prabhupada, just his presence, his smiling face, all of a sudden all of her problems shrunk down and became insignificant. And she was just happy being in the presence of Srila Prabhupada. This is the nature of the Lord, this is the nature of the devotees. We get so worked up in our mind, overcome by lust and anger and greed and envy, anxiety, depression. And when you're trapped in your mind alone, it can be a scary place. But immediately when you come in contact with somebody who's beyond that, they can free you from that. So it's just like trying to cross over this ocean of material existence. By the Lord's grace, it can be shrunken into just a little hoofprint of a calf, so we could step over it very easily. And Dhruva, in his prayers after seeing the Lord, he actually said this. He said that, now I will very easily be able to cross this dark ocean. Why? Because I've developed eagerness to hear about your glories. So, if you go back to the beginning of the Śrimad Bhāgavatam, the first canto, chapter 2, Sutta Goswami is explaining the science of Bhakti Yoga, essentially. And in these chapters, shlokas, from like 4 to 20, 21, he covers it very significantly. And you could say that the essence of life is to develop an attraction to hear about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when one hears about them, naturally they'll become purified, and when they're purified, they want to render service to Him. And how do they render service to Him? Through nice, loving prayers and songs. So what are we doing every day at the temple? We're gathering first thing in the morning. We're offering nice songs to the Lord, nice bhajans. Then we go on our own and we're chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. It's an offering to Krishna. And then we gather again, always singing and chanting, dancing together for pleasure of the Lord. I remember my first time visiting the Dham of Mayapur. So nice. Such wonderful deities, big temple room, so many devotees. I remember seeing all these brahmacharis lined up, dancing in unison in front of the deities, and I was like, oh, this is very clear that they're not dancing for their own pleasure, for their happiness, they're dancing for the pleasure of the Lord. how nice it must be for the Lord to see his devotees dancing in front of him. So, this is the type of mood that we should strive to have, is to always come together to worship the Lord. This is the Yuga Dharma, the Sankirtan Harinam. Parents, they have children and they love their children very much. Not that they love one child more than the other, they all have a certain relationship with each child, but there's love nonetheless. But what makes the parents even more happy is when the kids actually love each other and work together and have their own relationships, right? So, very same thing with the Lord. We can take to worshiping Krishna, serving Krishna, and that's nice. We're engaging in our swadharma, our position as a servant of the Lord. But what's even more pleasing to Krishna is pleasing his devotees. So, I hear that often, and often hear it in the context, okay, let me please the pure devotee, let me please the Guru. He is the way to Krishna, and this is very true. But what about all the other devotees? So in the Bhāgavatam, it describes ways to associate with one another. We should approach seniors with respect and ready to offer service. Those who are ignorant of Krishna consciousness or in a lesser position, we should be compassionate, merciful. But those who are on an equal platform, we should develop friendship. And it's actually said, out of these three, you know which one creates the most advancement in our consciousness, you could say? Association with equals. Because when we're with equals, there's always friction, you could say. Because this person, I'll put it like this, when there's a senior, the guru, he says something, yes, Guru Maharaj, very easily you follow and you want to serve, no fight. Somebody who's lesser position, they don't know anything, so you're giving to them. But somebody who's equal, friction, meaning they have their own idea, I have my idea, we have to work together, so we have to subdue our false ego so we can work together in the service of Guru and Krishna. And also, maybe I'm lazy one day, but he's doing extra, and then I'm envious, so then it makes me want to do more. So this association amongst devotees is very powerful. And we should always stay in the association of devotees. So Srila Prabhupada said he created this ISKCON so that devotees could come together and share these loving six exchanges. That's described in the Nectar of Instruction. So we should always give each other gifts and be open to receiving gifts, sharing prasadam. But one could almost say most importantly, to reveal one's mind and inquire from one another. Because it's very easy to be living in a temple. We're all doing the same exact thing, we dress the same way, we eat the same thing, and we think, okay, we're all here, we're all together, but we can be very much distant, even though externally we're in the same room. So to really churn the nectar of Krishna consciousness by inquiring from others and revealing what's on our mind can help us go so much deeper in our understanding of who we are in relation to Krishna. And this is the goal, understanding our position as a servant of the servant of the servant. So Dhruva, after he perfected his meditation, saw the Lord, he was leaving actually to go back to his kingdom, and he felt disappointed. How could I approach the Lord with such a such a nonsensical idea in my mind. Which is interesting because we could see this tends to be the nature of devotees. That they always render service, and you could see the best devotees, they offer so much service, but still they think they've done nothing, that they have so much more to give. In the beginning, we may have a very fruitive mentality. We think, oh, I did so much for Krishna. Now I'm going to get so much mercy, I'm going to get so much nectar. But we could see the acharyas, the advanced devotees, they think quite the contrary. I've done nothing. Narottam Das Thakur, chanting 2 lakh names a day, holy names a day, so pure in every form, every way. He's praying that I have wasted my life instead of worshipping Radha and Krishna. The Lord, I've engaged in material life, drinking the poison. So if he's engaging in drinking the poison of material life, then what to say about us? What to say about me? You could hear so many people in the material world that bring so many different ideas about how to live a life. The other day, for Janmashtami, we were distributing books in the front of the temple, and so many pious people coming to see Lord Krishna. But there was one boy, he was not so happy about coming to see Krishna. But he was dragged here, somehow or other, by his pious family. To understand Krishna, one has to be open. What does open mean? You have to approach with open hands. Just, Krishna, I'm here, I'm your servant, I have nothing to offer. And I need your blessings, I need your mercy. But if you're holding onto your own ideas, Krishna can be so far away, even though you're standing right in front of the deity. So, somebody can postulate so many ideas that we can fix the world by progressing in psychology, by teaching people how to take care of their body, how to spread wealth so we can make sure everybody are fed. But this is not the case. Dhruva, in one of his prayers to the Lord, he prays like this, saying that I'm asking for something temporary. It's like decorating a dead body. You know, so we can progress in every sphere of material existence, but still it's just like this, putting jewels on a dead body. So, as we hear from Srila Prabhupada and Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, is that we have to work with the situation that we're in. We have to deal with the body and make the best use of a bad bargain. So, we may need to do a little bit of exercise. We may need to understand our mind a little bit, so psychology, physical fitness, all these things have their aspect in life, not to be rejected altogether. But to think that these things will provide actual happiness and satisfaction and peace for all is ignorance. And this is what's said right here. Prabhupada quoted in the beginning of the purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that He is the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor of everything and anything within this creation, and the supreme friend of everyone. When one knows these things perfectly, he is always satisfied. So everybody knows what shloka this is coming from. This is the peace formula. Yes. So this is the true way to attain peace. And it's interesting because this boy who was here, who was fighting, the devotees, he didn't want to have an actual conversation because he's holding on to his whole ideas, his ways of thinking. But you could tell that he was not peaceful. And anybody that started talking to him also became not peaceful. So this is the way to attain peace here, is by understanding that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. So let me bring enjoyment to him. Krishna is the supreme proprietor. I have nothing. This body is not mine. The senses are not mine. And if I try to misuse them for my own self, then what happens? So many problems. And then Krishna is the supreme friend of everyone. So many people nowadays are suffering with anxiety and depression. We feel so much pressure in life. Pressure to perform, to act in a certain way. Pressure to make our living, make our way. Pressure to figure out who I am and what I should do with my life. And sometimes it feels like we don't have a friend that understands us, that cares for us, that loves us. But here, Krishna is the supreme friend of everyone. So simply if we turn to Krishna and learn to depend upon Krishna, Krishna will show up in our life time and time again. And just like Dhruva, he'll fulfill our desires in ways that we did not expect, which brings us more attraction for Krishna. So ultimately we see that Krishna is what's to be desired, and nothing material, nothing temporary. Yesterday we were sitting and talking, and conversation came up about loving Krishna, loving the devotees, bhakti. And the devotee was mentioning that in this life, we may never be like Dhruva. We may never see Krishna face to face. Okay, we come to the temple and we have darshan of Krishna in the deity form. But still we may think it's just a statue, a stone. We may have doubts in our mind like this. So we may never see Krishna where he touches us with his conch shell and immediately we become purified and we're able to offer just beautiful prayers and your senses become perfect. But what we can see is how Krishna is acting in our life. So we may never see Krishna, but we can see his hand, that he is acting. And it all takes taking a step out of our comfort zone and depending upon Krishna. And like I mentioned, this boy, the main theme of his argument was logic. This is not logical. This does not make sense. Logic may be another comfort, something that we're holding on to understand reality, which is actually not. It's not finite. It's not concrete. It's not sturdy. But when one can step out of that realm of logic for 1 second and turn to the Lord, then Krishna can fill us with the highest intelligence. Then all of a sudden, the process becomes completely logical. So we step out of our comfort zone, we approach Krishna, and Krishna will reciprocate. And then, because we're conditioned to the material world, we may become complacent. I remember when I first came to the temple, everything was brand new, everything was challenging, a bit scary. You don't know what's going on. You have to learn how to put on tilak and say these mantras and prayers. But then after some time, it becomes familiar, and you can do it when you're like half asleep, as some of us do often, which is it's not the greatest, but you've got to keep going forward. The point is that we make an attempt to surrender to Krishna, to show Krishna that we want him in our lives. But then we get used to it and we become familiar. So then Krishna's mercy can withdraw, because Krishna is really saying, why are you stopping? Please, give more, come further. So this is what's going to bring real lasting happiness, is by fully depending upon Krishna in every facet of life. And this is really exemplified by Draupadi. and she's being stripped of her sari. We all know the story from the Mahabharata. And how can she fight against a big warrior, who's trying to strip her cloth from her? But naturally, you want to, because, who wants to be seen naked in public? Except for some of the wonderful people walking around New York City. But she's fighting, she's resisting, and then eventually she throws up one hand and calls out to Krishna. But she's still holding on with the other hand, trying to fight. Not until she throws up both hands and calls out to Krishna with her whole heart, then Krishna comes in and protects her by providing unlimited amount of cloth. Sorry. So this is what Krishna wants. He wants our full dependence upon him. Imagine you're walking on the street and you see like a puppy dog, cute little puppy dog, and he's helpless. And he just comes up to you, and he just won't leave you alone. He just comes to you only. You see him at first and you say, okay, Hare Krishna, and you think of Jadabharat and everything, and you walk, but say if he just follows you all the way and doesn't stop and sits there and just completely depends upon you, part of you feels like obligated, like, oh, this guy's taking shelter of me, I have to do something. Which is interesting because sometimes we read the Śrimad Bhāgavatam and we take it into our lives and we become very rigid and not so compassionate. Okay, I cannot give to the poor because that is karma. I cannot take care of an animal because, I'll become a deer in my next life. Srila Prabhupada, the devotees were in New Vrindavan and they're sitting on the hill and there was a cat, maybe two of them, that came up to Prabhupada. H.D. Goswami, he tells the story, and he sees this cat and he's like, this filthy creature is going to approach my guru, I have to get him away. And Prabhupada took the cat and was like holding it on his lap and like rubbing its belly. And then Prabhupada made the comment that this creature is fully dependent upon me right now. So it's like the whole mood, everything that forms in the rasa of actually becoming dependent upon someone. You fully surrender in that way, the person feels obliged to help. And we can see that with devotees. Sometimes devotees may make offenses to other devotees. And then that we hear, okay, I make an offense, I have to approach the devotee, I have to apologize, or else I'm going to perish, forever. And we may even approach devotees and say, Hare Krishna Prabhu, I'm sorry for my offense, we go on. But no, what is offense actually? We use the English word offense, but the true word's aparad. Aparad, which means that's what's taking away love and devotion. Aparadha. So, it's said to be an aparad when we see devotees and we don't have a pleasant exchange. And imagine, we're walking down the hallway, we see a devotee, naturally you say, Hare Krishna Prabhu. But if not, you just kind of look away and you don't want to say anything and it's kind of awkward. It's aparad, it creates some friction, some kind of stagnant energy. So, a devotee may make a serious offense, but if that devotee goes and falls at the other devotee's feet with total humility, total just dependent upon this person's mercy. Devotees are merciful. There's only one answer, Your heart's melted, okay, I have to forgive this person, even though I'm hurt by what they did. So this is the nature of devotional service, this is the nature of sadhu sangha. It's purifying to everybody involved, heartwarming, heart-touching. And if we're practicing devotional service, which we can for years and years and years, and still maintain this hard heart, simply due to offenses, aparads. So we have to carefully guard against these aparads, not just with the holy name, amongst Vaishnavas, within our service, within the holy Dham, which some of you may live in this temple long time or short time, but it may feel like a long time. And it may seem like, okay, this is the temple, this is the place. Familiarity breeds content. But this is very much a holy Dham. At least I see it that way because I visit once in a while and I see how special it is, how many devotees are here. So much worship going on for Radha Govinda. Harinam all the time. And then if you walk right out that door, I could see a little bit of sunlight. You walk right out there, instantly. Just the modes of material nature is just like a tidal wave that will take you away. So being within the temple is transcendental. It's an oasis amidst this desert that's lacking Krishna consciousness. So there's so much to be learned from Dhruva Maharaj, so much inspiration. And one other thing I was thinking about when I was reading this, it was talking about Dhruva Maharaj's father, Uttanapad. He was lamenting like anything because he let the situation happen that his young boy went to the forest. You gotta think, 5 years old, he left to the forest. I don't know what you all were doing at 5, but I certainly wasn't, worshiping God. I wasn't doing pranayam. I didn't go to the forest all alone. I didn't desire, a kingdom, maybe some ice cream. Dhruva Maharaj is very spectacular. But when he came back to the kingdom, it said that his father embraced him, went to hug him, but Dhruva Maharaj had changed, or Dhruva. He changed because his whole being became transcendental. His senses became, the Lord gave him the blessing that he will be able to rule the earth for 36,000 years. And after he touched him with the conch shell, his intelligence became perfectly purified, his senses, and that would remain so for 36,000 years also. So we reach 36 years, and our everything starts going downhill. Which is why we should take the inspiration of Dhruva and Prahlad in our youth and give all of our energy to Krishna. Because in our old age, it's much more difficult actually. But when his father went to embrace him, something had changed. There was something in him that, he could feel the difference. And it was reminding me of other times that this has happened that we hear in our tradition of devotees encountering the Lord. And they just have a sudden shift in their whole being. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he went to, Gaya, to do the Shraddha ceremony for his father. And when he was there, he had darshan of the Lord. And also he met Ishvara Puri. And then, upon coming back to Bengal, all the devotees were greeting him, and he was telling them, his close associates, I have a problem. Can I tell you my problem? And in private, he said, I have this problem. I went there and I saw this beautiful blue boy. And now all I can think is, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? He had this darshan where he saw the Lord. Then he became hooked, he became addicted, he became maddened after Krishna. Similarly, Narottam Das Thakur, when he was on the banks of this, Padma, yes. He is there in the middle of the night. We know Lord Chaitanya put his prem there in the water to be deposited to Narottam when he came. And when he came, it all came in. And then Narottam was on the banks in ecstasy, exhibiting ecstatic symptoms, to which other normal people would seems like crazy. He's screaming, he's shaking, he's trembling. Then when his parents came, they could hardly recognize him because his skin had changed color. Before he was very dark, Then he developed this lightish golden complexion, and they asked him what happened. And he said, I saw the most beautiful gold boy, and he entered my body. So, these are extreme cases. Dhruva, Lord Chaitanya, Narottam. But Prabhupada, he's providing this experience for all of us, and we could see within our own lives and within others when we give Krishna consciousness to others, this transformation that takes place. So, let's continue to hear the Bhāgavatam, glorify the devotees such as Dhruva, continue to guard against the offenses, and follow the process as best as we can, turning to Krishna, and this transformation will take place. So, thank you everybody for patiently hearing and tolerating me. If there's any comments or questions, thoughts, discussion points, that would be welcomed. Yes.
Hare Krishna. When we notice subtle aparads in our engagements and interactions, like very subtle frictions, how do we approach those compared to like a big, obvious aparad?
Big aparads, they can be like dramatic because they're big, they're clear, it's like a big smack in the face. But these subtle ones are often more important because things form from subtle to gross. So subtle things are always there and we may not be aware of them, but then they'll manifest into gross. So, there's always a subtle aspect that leads to that gross. In the context you mentioned, aparad. So that's the point, is we have to really refine our consciousness, and the more one becomes purified in consciousness, then the more we're aware of the very subtle things in our consciousness. And this does not come overnight. It takes practice and due diligence and association with those who are free from these same things. Because the way that I've understood it is that Lord Chaitanya, he talks about this Chaito Darpana Marjanam, this cleansing of the mirror of the heart, of the mind. It's covered with dust. So the more you start to shine through it, the dust, the light starts to shine through. So all of our hearts are covered with this dust, and we're polishing a little bit, maybe a little bit of light is shining, but when we associate with devotees who are more purified, that their heart is more clear, then it's like more light is shining through them, and their light is bright, and it could shine on ours. And once you turn the spotlight onto our heart, then you could see, oh, I thought I was clear here, but actually there's a lot of blemishes. So the more we associate with pure, like senior devotees, then the more the spotlight is turned on, and we can see. And on the flip side, imagine right now I leave the temple and I just go live on my own. Very easy just to fall back into all of our old habits, all of our old ways. Waking up at 4 a.m, that's too much. I'll wake up at 6, 7. All this cleanliness thing, that's a little too much. I'll just take it easy. Things just pile on. So when we're associating with devotees, it helps us, keeps us in check. Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you. Hare Krishna.
Okay, anything else? Natapar could say something.
I was wondering if you could speak on the importance of attending the programs Prabhupada gave us, like Dhruva Maharaj. I guess maybe this is less a question, I'll just change it into a comment, and then you can you can comment on my comment.
That's
like Dhruva Maharaj was given by his guru a certain program. Like you do this pose, you breathe like this, then you make a deity like this, you say this mantra, you have this meditation, and just do that. And by doing that, he attained, full purification and got what he wanted and more. And so we're all tinged with some degree of material desire that needs purification. And we've come here, our guru has given us some program, and so we have to be patient and enthusiastic like Dhruva if we want to get the results. I mean, sometimes people may not be enthusiastic. Oh, I'm going there and I'm not feeling the ecstasy. The Mangalarti it's too early, and like I just don't. People aren't dancing ecstatically, and the tune isn't like so like extremely sweet. It wasn't my favorite singer, or not going to Guru Puja or not going to class, and because it's just not. We're not crying tears for Krishna yet, or there's the most Rasik esoteric topics aren't being like explicitly discussed. What do you have anything to say in that regard?
Yeah. We all wait to see who's giving Bhāgavatam class, and then that's how we decide whether we want to show up or not. This is it's not the greatest, but you could see why, one develops these type of mentalities, to, validate that. Because the tendency is if we just reject it altogether, then it creates people go this way and then we go this way. So we should strive to have ideal standards set within the temple so that we can all come together. Especially when there's a large temple or any temple, if there's no standards to follow, then this devotee acts like this, and then I'm thinking, oh, that's crazy, I don't want to be here when that's going on. And then this devotee, gives class, and he's speaking about something super high, and I really just need to hear, like, look, Prabhu, you're not your body, Shri Hare Krishna. So if there's no set standards, then things can become very polarized in many different ways. And we see this. At least I see this at bigger temples. I come from a very small temple where the emphasis is on these standards and everybody following the program, and then there's something to come together on, and you're all in this driving force. But like, for instance, you go to Vrindavan, Mayapur, big Swami is giving class, it's hard to get a seat within the temple. Then, the brahmachari is giving class next day, and, you could sit right up in the front. So, yeah, it's very important to have set standards, but yeah, like you mentioned, the guru, that's what the standards are coming from. Srila Prabhupada set the standards, and something I was thinking about is that we have such selfish mentalities actually, and we have this in the material sphere where, okay, obviously my sense gratification, my enjoyment, I want money, I want my house, my this, my me. But then we can even bring that into Krishna consciousness, that, material world is such suffering, and when I just chant and I just do my bhajan and my worship, then it's like, that's it, because that's the greatest, I'm getting the nectar, but what about everybody else? So we can see from our lineage, first of all, how would we know about Krishna consciousness? If it wasn't for Srila Prabhupada leaving India, we would have no idea. Maybe a few of us would, or something else would happen, but realistically, we got a book from Prabhupada, we heard from devotees that came from Prabhupada. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, this I find to be very significant. He took this vrat of chanting 1 billion names. And he's sitting there for 9 years chanting. And right when he finished, he wrote this bhajan, what is it? To his mind. Yeah. And in there, it sums up, like what we should do. Because we want to go do our bhajan and, fully engage and not go to the program where we take advantage of the temple, the structure, the facilities, and do our own thing and not participate. That is, even if somebody wants to do bhajan, we may even take advantage of the temple just to eat and sleep and, yeah. But to the highest degree, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did this for 9 years, something that none of us could do. And after that, that's when he decided to start his preaching mission. So, the mood of the gopis is to give Krishna So we should always strive to be there for others. And this is an acharya, somebody who sets the example. So I can't tell anybody else how to live their own life. I can only live my own life. But by participating in the programs enthusiastically as best as we can, then others can also do that, and we can create harmony, which is very important for new people to come and participate in. So there's a few thoughts. It's my limited perspective.
Going off of Natavar's point and how you mentioned in big temples, there can be a mood of independence. How do we protect our consciousness as new devotees from contaminating ideas about the programs or people thinking, oh, you can just create your own program, do it this way, go read these books. These are much higher.
We need strong support. We need devotees that we can love and trust. When we don't have so much experience, it's very easy to be swayed in many different directions. And there may be books that are higher, there may be paths that are higher. Now that's not the proper way to say, because Prabhupada gave us the highest thing, but how do I say, some people aren't satisfied with how fast that gets them to the goal. But if you want to take this super fast route, skip the program and just chant, rounds all day and read these books and, worship in your own way. It can be like, trying to go to the top floor of the building, but there's like a fire pole to climb. I don't know if you know, like in firehouses, they have like a hole in a pole, so like if they need to get to the ground level, they just slide down the pole. So like the fastest way up is straight up. Like, physics, it's the shortest distance. But if you go up and you slip, you come crashing down. And why do you come crashing down? Because when we're taking this slow process of Vaidhi Bhakti, which doesn't have to be slow, by the way, but generally speaking, we're going through the rigid sadhana, we're learning to tolerate, we're learning to associate with devotees, which I already established is like the most important thing, because that's what forces us to confront our false ego. And then we develop true purity, where we look at all aspects of our life and learn to see it in relation to Krishna and become wholesome. Rather than, I may take to that highest path because I'm fearful of where I came from and there's certain things I don't want to face, I don't want to embrace them. So better, it's not wrong if one takes shelter of Krishna, then that's the goal of life. But we all have to walk our own path. So this is why there's the importance of approaching Guru. And if we approach Guru just to get, fancy 3-string neck beads and a fancy new name, this is defeating the purpose. The reason to approach Guru is to take shelter, to follow their instructions. So if we are fortunate to have that, and not just Diksha Guru, but Shiksha Guru, those who we love and trust and respect and are capable of guiding us, then we should take shelter of them. Otherwise, you're so quickly to be led astray by so many things. And I didn't want to go so late, so I'll just say one last point, which I was thinking about earlier, is that Srila Prabhupada, what he did for all us, could never be undermined or underappreciated. Because, living in the West, we don't know of Krishna at all. Prabhupada brings us Krishna, and very easily you could realize, Krishna's there, Bhagavad Gita is real, let me give my life to it. But then you may go to India, and you see all sorts of things. And me personally, at least visiting Vrindavan, I've seen so many things, and when I use my intelligence, I actually can't say what's right or what's wrong. Because we're in Vrindavan. They're worshipping Krishna. It's the land of the holy Dham. And I see external things. So how can I know what's internally going on in their consciousness? I actually can't tell. No way. I have no way of telling. Because I can justify it in my mind in every different way to see why, that could be transcendental and this could not be transcendental. So what's the safe way that I know that will actually bring me to Krishna? It's what Prabhupada gave us. So if we simply follow what Prabhupada gave us, sure shot, you know where you're going to end up. But if you start to listen to this and that and it gets swayed away that, this is like the boring program, or it's like, the boring math class, you don't want to learn, and then there's like the rock star program. Yeah, it's dangerous. So, Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki jai, Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Radha Govinda ki jai, Ancha Kapatarubhyascha Kripasindhibhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.